Spire Motorsports has fined Carson Hocevar $50,000 for his most recent comments during a Twitch live stream, and 24/11 Racing and Firm Motorsports could lose their charters in the coming days. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and our motorsports story discusser today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Dean Thompson's 2025 Ugly scheme that we'll see this weekend at Pocono. Honestly, the scheme looks really solid, and that's an interesting sponsorship for the weekend. I think the car actually looks solid. It looks good. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Pocono. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Patrick Emerling's 2025 Campbell Beach scheme that we'll see this weekend at Pocono. Car looks alright in my opinion, kind of looks similar to the truck he is going to have this weekend at Pocono as well. It does look pretty solid. It does look good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Gio Ruggerio's 2025 First Auto Group scheme that we'll see this weekend at Pocono. I think this is a version 2 of what the scheme actually is going to look like. I think the truck actually looks decent. There's good look to it for sure. It does look nice. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Sieg's 2025 Shop Shade scheme that we'll see this weekend at Pocono. Car looks okay in my opinion. It's nice to see a new sponsor come in and work with Kyle Sieg this year. It does look alright, and it has some good colors to it. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Frankie Muniz's 2025 Black Cat Fireworks scheme that we'll see this weekend at Pocono. What's the last time the Black Cat Fireworks actually sponsored a truck or car? Like, it's probably been a long time since we've seen them sponsor. It's really nice seeing them come back to the sport and sponsor Frankie Muniz. The truck actually looks decent. It does look all right. Looking forward to the racetrack this weekend at Pocono. Now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Pigeon Forge Race Coaster. As it was reported by Joseph Strigley of the TobyCrazy.com network, the Pigeon Forge Racing Coaster, which is owned by BJ McLeod, will be open to the public on June 20th, which of course is 2 days from now. So this Friday, this racing coaster, which is kind of like one of those really cool Alpine racing coasters, this is going to be the first time they're going to have side-by-side type of coasters like the Alpine coasters many of you have seen across the country. Something like this is really cool. This is something that BJ McLeod has worked hard on. A lot of the money that he got from the purchase of the charter for Spire, buying up the charter from Live Fast Motorsports, went into this project from my understanding. And I think that this is a really cool project that BJ McLeod has worked on for a very long time. He and his wife have done a really good job working on something like this, and now they're going to get a chance and opportunity for this to come out to the public. To me, it's really exciting stuff. It definitely is something really cool for the sport for sure. Pretty cool to see BJ McLeod use his money to build something cool like this, and I think it's something definitely fun that you'll be seeing out in the Pigeon Forge area in Tennessee in the next couple days, which will be open to the public very soon. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Canadian Grand Prix. As it was announced yesterday, the Canadian Grand Prix has officially been extended through 2035, and they'll continue racing at Montreal through the 2035 Formula One season. I believe the original extension contract went to like 2027 or 2028, but now they've extended that contract with Formula One through 2035. Makes a lot of sense. Montreal puts on really good shows, and generally when it comes to the racing product for Formula One, this is one of the better racetracks on the Formula One calendar, which could have, of course, a big effect on the NASCAR side of things going forward as well. But I think it's exciting to see that Montreal is going to be on the schedule. It's a track that's been around for over 40 years at this point, nearly 50 years on the Formula One calendar, and it shouldn't go away anytime soon. So I'm very happy to see that while they continue trying to bring new tracks into Formula One, it's exciting to see that they also continue trying to keep tracks like Montreal on the calendar and on the schedule as well for Formula One. It's a great racetrack. It's a great facility. Good to see the Canadian Grand Prix will officially be back and will be on the schedule at least through 2035. I hope it happens longer as well, but pretty cool to see that it will be continuing at least through the 2035 year. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Jones. As it was announced yesterday that Connor Jones will drive the number 44 truck for Nice Motorsports this weekend at Pocono. I believe it's going to be the second race for Connor Jones in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this season. Look, I think y'all kind of know my thoughts on Connor Jones. I am not a massive fan of Connor Jones. Last year he drove for Thor Sport Racing in the number 66 truck, and he looked really bad on the racetrack. He never scored a single top 10 finish, and he just generally was never up to speed. And he ran okay at North Wilkesboro, but he did not set the world on fire. And what's kind of ironic is the fact that the guy he wrecked, Matt Mills, is teammates with him this weekend once again. I don't expect much from the 44 truck. When Ross Chastain drives this truck, I expect this truck to contend. Or when Bailey Curry drives this truck, I expect this truck to run well. I think Connor Jones is going to struggle this weekend. I don't think the pace and speed is going to be there for Connor Jones. I don't think it's going to be a good run. I think it's going to be a bad run overall for Connor, and I think Connor will run near the back half, running around people like Tony Breidinger this weekend is probably where he's going to run. I don't expect much. He was complaining recently about the over-aggressive drive, among other things. I think Connor Jones will struggle and unfortunately not run very well this weekend at Pocono Raceway. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, many of you have probably seen this photo that surfaced on Kyle Larson's Instagram page yesterday. Well, Kyle Larson was, of course, at a Los Angeles Dodgers game very recently with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and the manager of the team for the Los Angeles Dodgers, Dave Roberts. And Kyle Larson had a very, very good joke against Ricky Stenhouse Jr. talking about Ricky Stenhouse Jr. basically needs to go out there and control his anger and trying to give a little advice to the owner of the manager of the team, Dave Roberts, to really help them out quite a bit. Now, obviously, this comes after what happened at Mexico City, when, of course, we know Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has not been very happy with Carson Hocevar, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. says that once they do get back to the States, which now they are back in the United States for this weekend at Pocono, there is a chance we could see some retaliation or some sort of payback coming between Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Carson Hocevar, and there might be some stuff coming very, very soon on that front. Also, a lot of people are saying, oh, this is Larson being mean. Kyle Larson's really good friends with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. They've been friends for a very, very long time. So this is just a little bit of a joke and some banter that these two have, considering they're both dirt racers and both have had success as dirt racers. They both know what they like especially. So I think it's kind of funny to see Kyle Larson show his comedic side, and people say Kyle Larson doesn't have personality. The guy can show personality when he wants to show it. There's just sometimes these guys don't want to show that said personality there. But I like when I see people like Kyle Larson do stuff like this. I think stuff like this is really, really funny. I love the sense of humor that we see from people like Kyle Larson. I think it's hilarious. I think it's funny what he said, and I think it's kind of hilarious to see Kyle Larson trying to throw a jab there at Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and I think it's a kind of a thing. It's interesting for sure, right? And I think it's kind of cool to see that their friendship has been around for a very, very long time. I love the jokes, and I love the sense of humor that Larson has, especially at times like this when he can make a little bit of a joke at something like this. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about the Gateway TV ratings from this past weekend for IndyCar. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that Fox Sport got 1.012 million viewers for the IndyCar race at Worldwide Technology Raceway. That is up from 537,000 viewers on USA in 2024, which is a near 100% increase over 2024. This is a big number. This is the first time, I believe, since 2016 that we have had more than one or two races that have had over 1 million on the IndyCar season this year. This, I believe, the first time, I think, since 2016 that 3 races have had over 1 million viewers in an IndyCar year. Obviously, a big reason why this race got a ton of viewership is because they were not conflicting with NASCAR. Remember, originally, the Gateway IndyCar race is actually supposed to go up against in NASCAR at the same time, pretty much. IndyCar actually worked with NASCAR once, of course, their program with Fox kind of came done and got officially done recently for the 2025 year. They made a decision a couple weeks ago to move the Gateway race back to later in the evening. And I think it was one of the best decisions that I think IndyCar has made in quite some time. Plus, let's be real and honest, that race is really entertaining and really, really fun. Now, the big thing is there's some head-to-heads coming up, I believe, between IndyCar and NASCAR throughout the rest of the year. I think we've learned our lesson here, IndyCar. Don't schedule races against NASCAR and work with NASCAR because you have a lot of NASCAR fans who are also IndyCar fans like myself. When you schedule things head-to-head, it does have a conflicting thing. Some people, of course, can do double screen, but I think that this is a huge win. Plus, oval racing generally does really good in the TV ratings, and that's why I think we need more oval races on the schedule for IndyCar. Plus, they've had put on the best racing, and the road course racing for IndyCar recently has not been that great, especially with the hybrid system being involved. So these ratings are really, really, really good in my opinion. They are nice to see, and I think that hopefully in the future we are going to see those ratings continue to go up, continue to grow, and I hope that we do continue to see increase in those TV ratings going forward into the future, because I think those are very, very important for the ratings to be very, very high in the future for IndyCar so they can survive long term, because outside of the Indy 500, they don't do enough promotion. So seeing ratings like this for this race at Indianapolis at Gateway is really solid and very, very good, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about CR7 Motorsports. As it was reported and it's expected to be announced that CR7 Motorsports is teasing a pretty major announcement that is expected to happen tomorrow around noon to 1 Eastern Standard Time. Now, we don't know exactly what this announcement could be for CR7 Motorsports. There are a few theories that I have seen from people suggesting it could be an announcement for maybe Lime Rock Park next week. We don't know, of course, there's going to be a lot of road course guys going to be running that event. We've heard Thomas Newsiata might be driving for Spire Motorsports in one of their trucks at Lime Rock Park. We've also know some other drivers. We do know that ThorSport does have an announcement later today on a driver who might be getting into that program in the number 66 truck. Not sure exactly who that is at this point. So it could be a drive for Lime Rock Park. I'm not exactly sure, because it's not going to be someone from the Cup Series or Xfinity Series, because they're going to be racing at Atlanta Motor Speedway during that time. Another theory that I have seen is that it could be an announcement around Dodge, of course, with the Ram program. Ram, of course, is expected here to continue negotiating with teams. We haven't officially heard of CR7's name is mentioned as a possibility, but the fact I've heard CR7 mentioned as a possibility is interesting, and I think that they'd be a solid team to go with. They do have a big association with McAnally Hogeman Racing currently at the moment, but I don't know how long that technical deal is supposed to last with that program. So I think if they're one of the teams, that'd be interesting. And could this be a potential spot for Cletus McFarland as well? Maybe like 2 trucks for that program, and if Cletus goes over there, that would certainly be interesting. That'd be a pretty good team to go with. Be teammates of Grant Enfinger, who could be a really good coach to help out. We also have heard Dana Weiss name mentioned as a possibility to Ford, one of the Dodge programs that does come in. Nonetheless, I'm very interested to see what happens to CR7 Motorsports and who might end up getting behind the wheel of the trucks if they do end up coming out here. I think it's really exciting stuff. I'm very interested to see what this announcement is going to be tomorrow. We'll get to find that out, and if it's a big announcement, we'll talk about that here on the channel, and it'll be something we'll get to cover on the channel in the coming days and weeks. So nonetheless, excited to see what the announcement is and see which driver will get behind the wheel of their truck if they do end up switching over to Dodge and Ram next year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Mexico City TV ratings from this past weekend. And honestly, they're actually pretty good. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday, the Amazon Prime got 2.1 million viewers for the Cup Series race at Mexico City. He also notes that the post-race drew 1.07 million viewers, the most, I believe, for a post-race in a very long time, and the most watched post-race we have seen so far in 2021, and all 4 of the races have happened on Amazon so far. But there is more. According to Adam Stern as well, in a second post-test service, the median age for all 4 of NASCAR's prime races is 56.0. That is down 6 years from the average age on national television from 62 years old. Now, the overall rating, 2.1 million viewers for a race on streaming, is actually really, really good. And if I'm not mistaken, that 18 to 49 demographic, which was noted as well by Adam Stern, this is the youngest audience we have seen for a NASCAR event in 8 years, going back to 2017. And the 18 to 49 and 1834 demographics, we have seen the highest numbers in those for those races. I think 2.1 million with that is really important. A lot of the people that are a lot older, around my dad's age, for example, a lot of those people don't have streaming and they're not willing to go to streaming. A lot of people my age, however, are a lot more willing to go do streaming stuff. And according to something that was reported by Nielsen, more people are starting to head toward the streaming side of things than they are to the normal cable packages, among other things. Because streaming services like Amazon, for example, they don't cost as much as, let's say, like going to there. It's even like YouTube TV and Fubo TV now, those are a lot more expensive than a lot of those other like companies, like especially like Amazon, for example, which is only $15. But the other big important factor is the median age for Prime's coverage. 56 years old. That is 6 years younger than what it is on national television. That, in my opinion, is probably the most important thing. NASCAR needs to find a way to attract a younger demographic overall long term. And I think having your age drop a little bit around 6 or 7 years is very important for the long-time support of the sport. The big question is going to be long-term, though. Are these people that are tuning into the races, that are tuning in on Amazon, are they going to continue coming over and watching the sport long-term? That is going to be the major question. question is, outside of like the races at Mexico and the race coming up at Pocono, will they come to those races on TNT? Atlanta's probably going to have a big drawing crowd because Atlanta is a big race for ratings, especially. You look at the race at Atlanta, for example, I think that race drew like 3 or 4 million viewers, I'm pretty sure. So it drew a massive and major attendance. So that'll be something to watch out for too, as well as we get through the rest of the year. And will those people tune into like the NBC races at the end of the year? Will we see a big rating for the championship race? Will they tune into that? That's the big question right now. But I think the ratings are very solid for this weekend. And I do think they actually look nice. It's good to see that over 2 million people tune in. And hopefully some of those people do tune into more of those races going forward into the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Richard Petty. Now, obviously, there has been a lot of talk and conversation surrounding the NASCAR playoff format and what happened this past weekend in Mexico City. So, of course, Shane Van Gisbergen coming into the race at Mexico City was 33rd in the regular season standings. And he did move up to 30th in the regular standings. But because of the fact he did pick up the win in Mexico City, he jumps from being 30th in the regular season standings up to being 9th in the regular season standings because, of course, he does have an extra playoff point by winning a stage and also getting 5 playoff points by winning the race at Mexico City. And Richard Petty spoke about this by saying that he is not a fan of win and you're in, and spoke about the fact that a guy 30th in the points should probably not be in the playoffs. Also kind of criticized road course racing and NASCAR in general, which we're not going to kind of talk about that. But he also said what happens to the guy that's 15th in the points or 16th or 18th in the points while a guy in 30th gets to jump because they pick up one win. I've always stated this on this channel, and since we've been doing this winning year and stuff for the last 12 years, I have never been a fan of a driver locking their way into the playoffs based on winning a race. You can have a really bad season like Shane Van Gisbergen has had so far, but if you get one win early in the season, you're able to lock your way in. Now, that being said, in the defense of Shane Van Gisbergen, the win that he got, I think was definitely more legitimate than the one Harrison Burton got. Harrison Burton got a push from Parker Retzlaff and got the push there to go to victory lane and led only one lap in that whole entire race while running in the middle to back of the pack in majority of that event. For Shane Van Gisbergen, he straight up dominated and won the race by 16.5 or 16.7 seconds. The second largest margin of victory in the last 20 years in this sport. Really the second largest margin of victory in the modern era of NASCAR. But the facts are the facts. A guy should not be able to lock their way in. But I also will say this. I don't think Shane Van Gisbergen is going to finish 30th in the regular season standings. One, SVG has gotten better on ovals. His oval performance has been getting better and better as time progressed and gone on. In the last 5 oval races, Shane Van Gisbergen has had 3 or 4 top 20 finishes, including actually a top 15 at the Coke 600, and was running in the top 20 at Nashville before a little bit of a bad strategy call by Steven Duran put him back in 25th place, but it being very hard and really difficult to pass like it's not been in the past. He, of course, got a top 20 at Michigan, and he's starting to really turn the corner on the ovals. We all knew that this was very likely going into the year. There is talk about a change of the format, but it sounds like winning you're in, according to Dale Jr., is probably not going to be going away. A lot of people want the Winston Cup format to come back, and I think that it needs to come back if we are going to have a system like this going forward as well. If we keep doing winning you're in, Shane's going to get a multi-year contract extension more than likely with this program. But Richard is right in the fact that a driver should not be able to lock their way in when they have a bad season like SVG has unfortunately so far this year. But again, Shane Van Gisbergen, I don't think is going to finish 30th. We've got more road courses coming up as well. And I do think that SVG is going to win more road course races like Chicago in a couple weeks. He's going to be really good in 2 weeks from now. He's going to have a great chance and opportunity to go out there and get that done. I don't expect SVG to not win anymore. I think he's going to win a couple more races for the end of the season. And it wouldn't surprise or shock me when it's a super speedway race. There's a lot of surprise tracks coming up. SVG's been all right at super speedway races when it comes to his performance. So we'll see what happens there. But I do think that Shane Van Gisbergen will be someone to watch out for as time progresses and goes on throughout the year. But I don't disagree with Richard on the fact of how the playoffs are kind of constructed at this point. I think there are changes that are needed for the playoff format to be better. The problem is it sounds like they're not making massive and major changes, and things will be a little bit more simplified when it comes to the format. In my honest opinion, I think there need to be changes, but I don't think those changes are going to be coming at this particular moment and point. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2026 NASCAR silly season. Now, obviously, there is a lot of talk surrounding 2025 NASCAR silly season because there isn't expected to be a lot of major movement that is going to happen on the NASCAR silly season front, unless, of course, what happens with the lawsuit happens where 2011 and Front Row lose their charters, which we're going to talk about here in just a short little bit. But during the most recent teardown that happened after the NASCAR Cup race in Mexico City, it sounds like the 2026 NASCAR silly season could be wild. I was taking a look at a lot of drivers' contracts for 2026 when it comes to the silly season, and I will say that there definitely are some drivers and big-name drivers that are not signed for 2026 at this point. On the Hendrick Motorsports side, you have Kyle Larson and Alex Bowman. They're both in a contract year going into next year. Now, I don't expect Kyle Larson to go anywhere. I expect Kyle Larson to sign a multi-year contract, most likely to the end of the decade. Larson has said he does want to retire from Cup competition multiple times before he turns 40 years old. He, of course, will turn 33 by the end of this year. But Larson, I don't expect to go anywhere. He will likely sign a contract extension with Hendrick. Alex Bowman's an interesting case. Bowman has had some up and down performances with Hendrick Motorsports. I think there's a great chance Alex Bowman is going to sign another extension with Hendrick Motorsports till the end of the Ally contract, which is 2028, and then maybe make a change on that front, but I don't expect anything to change there. I think Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be in a contract year next year as well with Trackhouse Racing. I think after winning the race at Mexico, he probably is going to get another extension with the team, and the thing is, if he gets better on ovals, I think he'll become an all-around accomplished driver. Also, you got to look at, I believe, Ty Dillon has got a contract year next year. He's expected to sign with Collin Racing. Josh Berry is also expected to sign with the Wood Brothers once again next year. And I think he has a multi-year deal initially, and he'll be back with the team. He could be in a contract year at the end of next year. Bubba Wallace and Riley Herbst, if they stay with 20-11, both those guys could be in contract years. Kyle Busch is going to be one of the big-name free agents at the beginning of next season. It's unknown if he'll be back with Spire Motorsports past the 2026 year. He could go to Spire and not leave, and maybe leave RCR. Austin Dillon also will be in a contract year. There is speculation Austin Dillon in the future could go to more of an executive role with RCR. That is certainly a possibility. And you think about other teams, Front Row, their drivers are only under contract through next year to my understanding, and same thing goes with Spire Motorsports. McDowell, Hocevar, and Justin Haley are all drivers who could be in contract years. And I think some of that could be an association if Dodge comes in. Could some drivers, if their Chevrolet contracts or Toyota contracts press, if they switch, who knows? But also Eric Jones, he's in a contract year next year. Tyler Reddick, I think, is safe past this year, so I don't see Tyler Reddick going anywhere at this moment. But there are, and I believe that Cindric's contract is only going through 2026 currently at the moment with Team Penske, and there could be some other drivers and teams that I haven't mentioned here that could also be free agents at the end of next year. I think there's a lot of drivers to watch out for. I think Briscoe's contract only goes through 2026, and Denny Hamlin, while he is expected to sign, he could be his final year next season. And then I believe other drivers like Ty Gibbs are in contract years, so Ty Gibbs does have a long-term deal, considering, of course, Ty Gibbs is the grandson of Joe Gibbs, who, of course, owns the team and the organization. And in general, in a nutshell, I think that we are going to see some pretty big movement in the NASCAR silly season very, very soon for next year. I think this year is a little bit more simplified, and I think next year is going to be a lot more complicated. Though I will say I think Xfinity and trucks, there's going to be a lot of movement with the Ram program coming back on who could end up in those programs going forward very, very soon. I'm interested to see how the rest of this silly season plays out going into next year and what drivers could be on the move to other teams and organizations in the not-so-distant future if drivers end up making the moves that I think could end up being made. So we'll see what happens, but it seems like silly season might be wild for next year. This year, not as crazy, but I think some movement is going to be happening very soon in the NASCAR silly season, in my honest opinion. Now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about 2011 and Front Row Motorsports and the NASCAR lawsuit. As we've had more updates in regards to the NASCAR lawsuit in the last couple days. So yesterday it was reported by Bob Pockrass, and I forgot that this was going on, but yesterday 2011 in Front Row, and NASCAR went to court in regards to NASCAR's counterclaim against 2011 and Front Row Motorsports. They filed a counter lawsuit a couple months ago against 2011 Racing and Front Row Motorsports. Now, why did NASCAR file a counter lawsuit against the team? Well, big reason what they were filing for is because of two big reasons. Number one is because of potential boycotting of races and basic coercion behind the scenes and trying to convince people to get involved in a lawsuit and behind the scenes that didn't want to and back out of going to races, but also negotiating behind the scenes as well. To me, when I heard this kind of stuff, I definitely disagree with NASCAR saying that they were negotiating stuff behind the scenes and negotiating against NASCAR's will. I don't think that's anything against and illegal what the teams were doing. I think that NASCAR probably is out of the line there. They had apparently that hearing for over 2 hours. We really won't get a final decision on that front from that side of the lawsuit going forward. It also is a big talking point about if the other teams also could end up joining the lawsuit. The 2011 in front row and their side of the things, they definitely want to see more people get involved with the lawsuit. Other teams and other organizations get involved that have already signed the charter agreement. But other organizations and teams like RFK Racing, like Trackhouse Racing, like Calling Racing, like Hendrick Motorsports, who've already signed the lawsuit currently at this moment, not the lawsuit, signed the other charter agreement, they are trying to convince the judge, in this case, to not get involved with the lawsuit overall, and they want to stay out of it because it's not their place to get involved in this said lawsuit. That's one thing that they are exactly wanting at this moment right now. But there's also an update in regards to the appeal situation. Obviously, of course, 2011 Front Row lost their original preliminary injunction hearing, and now they could potentially lose their charters in the coming days. According to what was reported, tomorrow, by the time you're watching this, there is a potential possibility that 2011 in Front Row could lose their charters by tomorrow, which a week after the decision is officially made and everything is officially done, they could go ahead and lose those said charters. Now, also, Jeffrey Kessler kind of talked about what the overall goal is with the lawsuit. We haven't really heard an official hearing on what exactly the long-term goal is of the lawsuit going forward and what changes they want to see in the sport. They want to see potential possibility of teams being allowed to go race at different events, like, for instance, IndyCar getting the chance and opportunity to race at ISC tracks that are owned by International Speedway Corporation, which is, of course, owned by NASCAR at this moment, and being allowed to go race in different series as well, and letting the teams do that when it comes to the next-gen car. And they want to be able to sit at the table a little bit more so they can make some of the decisions in the sport in regards to the next-gen cars. I mean, we're already hearing rumors about a Gen 7 car, a Gen 8 car, I should say, maybe in the works long-term. They've talked about they're already working on deals for a Gen 8 car at this point. They want to be able to sit in meetings to decide what happens long-term with those cars if that does come into play. So it's like, okay, here we go. We're finally starting to get some indication of what the long-term plan is for NASCAR and for them and what they want to see change. They want NASCAR to kind of become a league long-term. That's what Michael Jordan wants, and that's what Denny Hamlin, everybody in the industry wants to see that is involved with this lawsuit currently at the moment. But let's get back to the second point of this. Obviously, we all know that there's a very likely chance and a strong possibility that unless 2011 and Front Row do appeal the case, which, again, they are expected to appeal the case currently at the moment, there's a very big chance and possibility that 2011 and Front Row could lose their charters in the coming days. This would mean that all 6 of the cars that are owned by 2311 and Front Row Motorsports, Bubba Wallace in the 23, Tyler Reddick in the 45, Bradley Herbst in the 35, Noah Gragson in the 4, Zane Smith in the 38, and Todd Gill in 34, all 6 of those charter cars could end up becoming open cars instead of charter cars going into those events, which means they would have to qualify for every single race. And that would also mean instead of getting their normal starting position, unless that's something in the provision, they would basically have to start every qualifying session in the front of the grid, which would mean they'd be having a very difficult time starting up front because when you go out early in qualifying, your performance and speed is usually not as good and your pace and speed is not always as good as it generally can be. And I don't think that will hurt the team long term. I think 2011 has performance has somewhat been affected by this. I mean, Tyler Reddick, of course, has to perform as well. If they become open teams, this could have a major effect on silly season going forward. Because if I'm not mistaken, in most of these drivers' contracts, majority of them have provisions in their contracts where they are required to have a charter in there. Bubba has that in his. Tyler Reddick has that in his contract. I believe Riley Herbst has that in his contract. Todd Gillen does. Corey Heim has that in his contract. Zane Smith, I believe, has that in his contract. And I also believe that Noah Gragson has that in his contract for the teams as well. If they are not able to keep their charters and they don't appeal the decision, which again, I do expect an appeal, they could all end up being free agents and a lot of them could be looking for rides. I mean, Tyler Reddick could have left 2311 Racing and gone to another team and an organization like Joe Gibbs Racing, for example. Especially with the Monster backing, he could have gone there for a season if things had fallen through. And obviously, I think Tyler Reddick in a Joe Gibbs racing car would definitely be really, really good. Now, if they are to lose those charters, and 2011 does end up losing their charter, same with Front Row, NASCAR would basically not give them back the charters, but also would not be able to sell those charters to another team and organization, because that would be going against what they're looking for when it comes to the lawsuit. It would be a really bad judgment look on NASCAR's part if they were to say, hey, we're going to take these charters and then we're going to sell it to somebody else. That would be an awful and horrible look for the sport in general and a nutshell if they were to do something like that. I'm going to be interested to see what happens in regards to this going forward, whether they are going, again, of course, they are going to appeal it, but I'm very interested to see what happens with the long-term effects of this lawsuit going forward, and if they are going to appeal it. And again, I think there's some big changes coming. Judge Kenneth Bell said he doesn't know where the long-term resolution is going to be for something like this. We're going to keep an eye on the story as time progresses and goes on, but again, there's a very strong chance and possibility that, again, there's a good chance we could be seeing them lose their charters very, very soon, and it could have a major effect on the long-term effects of the team's performance, unless, of course, they win the lawsuit, which I believe they would get those charters back, or the charter system could be gone altogether, because NASCAR has threatened that they might get rid of the charter system altogether if they lose the lawsuit, which would be a bad look on NASCAR's part, and they have a lot more lawsuits coming, and they probably would join the other teams. We'll see what happens, and we'll see what happens with the long-term effects of the lawsuit going forward. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Carson Hocevar. We talked about the story on the channel last night, but it was announced and confirmed that Carson Hocevar has been fined by Spire Motorsports, which they have fined Carson Hocevar $50,000. All that money will be going to 3 separate charities from Mexico. I think one of them will be associated with helping with humanitarian efforts, and all the money will be going to those efforts going forward. It was also announced as well that he will also be required to do sensitivity training with Spire Motorsports in their camp as well. Spire Motorsports informed NASCAR they were going to be fining Carson Hocevar $50,000 in the team and organization, and NASCAR has said, okay, you're allowed to do this, so we don't have to fully get involved. You guys are allowed to do what you need to do, and you can go ahead and fine Carson Hocevar there. Now, why did Carson Hocevar get fined $50,000? Well, it's from comments that he said during a live stream very recently. Before Carson Hocevar went to Mexico City this past weekend and got to the racetrack, he was doing a live stream which he kind of confirmed that Chicagoland Speedway more than likely was going to be returning to NASCAR for 2026. There's a lot of rumors about that, even though now we're hearing San Diego might be on the schedule next year for 2026. He basically insinuated it was saying not the most nicest things about Mexico City. He basically called Mexico City an S-hole during the week before he got out to the racetrack. Now, after these comments had surfaced from the live stream, Carson Hocevar actually released an apology for what he had said. He said, I've been from Portage, Michigan. I've been a sheltered person, and I've never really been outside of Michigan, outside of going to the racetracks. After experiencing my time in Mexico City, what I said was wrong, and I apologize for that. Spire also acknowledged in that Carson has apologized and made a public statement on there, which he apologized for, and they do think Carson will understand this going forward. Carson Hocevar actually doubled down last night on their decision. There were a lot of people on social media that were defending Carson Hocevar for his original actions and calling Mexico City you know what, but Carson basically said, the truth is the truth. I said something on a live stream that I regret. People are like, do you want me to be myself? But I was being myself, and I said something that I should not have said, and I regret that. He said, I've never been to the racetrack prior, and I made a mistake, and I made a terrible judgment call on that front. I'm going to learn from this mistake and grow as a person going forward. This is what I like about Carson Hocevar. I know people are going to say Carson Hocevar is trying to be a little bit safe and all that, but I think Carson Hocevar knows he made a major mistake, and the fact he's acknowledging he made a mistake, I have a lot of respect for that. In the case and situation, you can say what you want to say about Mexico City. I'd have never been to Mexico City before, though, so I can't really give my opinion on Mexico City because I've never been to Mexico City before. But sometimes, because he also said there were people that told him things, basically made a lot of fantasies about it before he went to the track, and that's why he was saying the opinions that he had said. That's what happens when you're sheltered, and that's unfortunately not on Carson Hocevar fully. That's on people that have raised them, among other things, that kind of tell them about stuff like this, even though I've never been to Mexico City before. But the thing with Carson Hocevar, and the reason why I think that this is a fair penalty in a sense, at least to fine, At least it's not a points penalty, and at least Spire Motorsports isn't getting rid of him. The most important thing here is that NASCAR did not really get involved, in that this was more of a Spire Motorsports decision than anything else. If NASCAR had fined Carson Hocevar for this, I'm not sure how I would feel about that. I think, because we all remember the Noah Gragson situation. If Legacy, they want to do something against Noah, that was up to them, and that was their prerogative if they wanted to suspend him. But at NASCAR suspending Carson Hocevar indefinitely for those comments, I didn't, what he said and other stuff, like in that meme, I did not fully agree with that, and I think NASCAR completely went overboard and went above the line. Unless your Legacy Motor Club was looking for any sort of excuse and any sort of reason to get rid of Noah Gragson at that time, so they could bring John Hunter Nemechek into the program, because they were not happy with Noah Gragson's performance, and they were struggling, and they were looking for any excuse at that point to get rid of Noah Gragson. Even though, let's be real, Noah Gragson has not looked that good with Front Row Motorsports outside of a couple races so far this season. In a nutshell for this, a lot of people are saying, well, why can Spire Motorsports do this? We should have freedom of speech, among other things. And while I do agree with that to an extent, you do have to be very careful, especially in the sporting world. If it's like if you go and work for a company, right? Your boss, if you say something negative about the boss that you work for on social media, there is a chance and possibility that that boss could end up firing you, especially if you're a social media creator like myself. If we say something that is very, very wrong, that could get us in a lot of trouble. You could lose sponsorships over things, even though I've never been sponsored, and you could lose a lot of potential opportunities here if you say something very, very wrong. That's why a lot of us have to be very careful what we say on social media, because people can be looking at that, and that could really affect your long-term bottom line. That's the same thing for Carson here. The difference is Spire Motorsports, they are worth millions and billions of dollars. Dan Towers owns the organization, so you're not going to have to really worry about sponsorship long term, because Gamebridge is owned by Dan Towers, and Gamebridge sponsors that 77 car quite a bit, so there's really no issues for Carson Hocevar on that front. For Carson, he's only 22 years old, and I think for Carson, this can be a really big learning experience. This is very similar to some things that have happened. Bubba Wallace, I believe, got a penalty for something similar to this a few years back. Haley Deegan basically said something also really bad. She got forced by NASCAR to do sensitivity training. She got a fine as well. I think Kyle Busch got a big penalty for something very similar to this not too long ago as well. And of course, Kyle Larson made very bad comments on iRacing and lost his ride and basically his whole entire career over stuff like this. Sometimes you got to be very careful what you say, especially on a live stream. I don't want to see Carson Hocevar stop doing the live streams altogether. I think the live streams have been really fun and very amazing to watch. But also, when you look at the situation for Carson, he's got to be very careful what he says on social media, because a lot of people are paying attention, and a lot of sponsors, among other things, are paying attention to what you are saying. If they see you doing stuff like this, they may ask the owner of the team, or not, well, people over at that team, to kind of tell you, hey, this is not a good thing, and this is very unacceptable. The behavior from Carson, sometimes he's young, he's brash, he's got to clean up some of the stuff on the track, but for Carson, I think this is a massive learning experience from him, and I think he'll be able to take this learning experience and grow as an individual, because I think Carson's a good dude. I think he's basically admitted his mistake, now learn from it, experience it, get better, and do that. Kyle Larson did that when he made his mistake. He went and gone and helped communities behind, basically without putting it all on social media. So I think for Carson, I think he'll learn from this and grow from this and become a much better person going forward into the future. And I think Carson made a mistake here, but also I think he'll learn from this and grow from this as an individual. So, that is going to be today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so that if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. List description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What thoughts about Spire Motorsports finding Carson Hocevar $50,000 for his live stream? Comments, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all our stories talk about, including potential of 2011 Front Row losing their charters altogether? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If any major news breaks later today, we'll discuss it live on the channel. If not, the next time you're going to see me is later today, which we'll be doing Truck Series race picks as well. Tomorrow, we're of course going to have race picks for Cup in the Xfinity Series, and we're also maybe going to do a Penske video, but I might push that to Friday. We're also going to have the Truck Series race video on Friday and a Cup news video as well. We're going to be talking about San Diego, as rumors have circulated that San Diego is going to be on the schedule next year, and some other big stuff that's in the works, as well as a lot of news continues to break, and there might be some other penalties coming as well, like Tab Boy might be getting a penalty, but we're not sure at this point. Nonetheless, nonetheless, a lot of big news coming. We're going to be talking about people like Haley Deegan, Shayman, Gisberg, Cards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Ryan Preece, Cletus McFarland, Dodge, Ram, Frankie Muniz, Connor Zilic, Carson Quaffle, Junior Motorsports, Eric Almirola, Chandler Swift, all the good stuff we'll be talking about on the channel in the coming days and weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.